Hey everybody, welcome back. Hometown History Extra. Tonight we have Bob Mann, who is responsible for the Lillie, Belle and the Henry C. Schaad Memorial in Farquhar Park. And we have Jacob Lemon, who is restoring the Smoketown Cemetery in Goldsboro. So tonight we're going to ask them a few questions about their do-it-yourself urbanism, and we hope you enjoy the show. So our first question for both of you gentlemen is, what inspired you to get involved with these initiatives? Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I can go first.
Our first victim.
Well, the reason I got involved is I saw back in 1969 on July 21st, I saw Miss Allen get shot and killed during the race riots in 1969. So that was my inspiration to start my project. However, it took 50 years to get that started. On the 50th anniversary, I woke up that morning and I told my wife, I said, I'm going to go to the benches and put flowers there. So I went to the park and I put the flowers there. And when I got back home, I told my wife, I said, well, I think I'm going to do this for a year, just for my own heart, I guess you could say. And so I started that project, and after July 21st this year, I started year 6, so I haven't stopped. So I'm working on 1,900 consecutive days with flowers on those benches.
Wow.
Nice.
That's amazing.
It's very meaningful. Jacob, how about you?
Yeah, thank you. So I actually always liked cemetery work. I do it for my own family, but I was always too young, and a lot of the material and stuff to do the preservation just didn't exist. Now that I'm adult, I have adult money. I can do those things, and I was like, well, I need to learn. So I learned. And I figured, well, one of these days I actually have to do it instead of just my own family. I want to actually help someone else. And I had moved to Edders a couple years ago, and then I was driving past Smoketown Cemetery, which if you've never driven past it, it's split on 2 sides of the road. And I saw, I don't know how many stones down, crooked. They were all just dark from years of neglect, weeds. And I was like, I almost cried. I even went home to my wife and I said, there is a cemetery 5 minutes from the house that looks like death. And I was like, I cannot handle that. So I was like, what if I were to post online and videos and photos? Because now with media the way it is, it's becoming a thing. So a lot of people are doing it and they're getting millions of views. And again, like you guys said earlier, I don't care about that at all. But I was like, there are people here that matter. And I saw a couple flags, so I knew they were veterans. And I'm very, very, very veteran focused. And I was like, I need to do something. And I looked at my wife, I said, I think I'm going to start restoring the cemetery. And she's like, what? And I'm like, I'm just going to do it. And I did. I literally just walked in one day and I said, I'm just going to start. So I picked the easier stones, ones that were just kind of already straight, easy to clean. But the initial reaction or the initial start of it was driving past and literally seeing just chaos. And I was like, I cannot handle that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And Bob, you also have a role on social media. You also share. Can you tell us about how you've been interacting with the public?
Yeah, I post a lot about the benches, a lot. And in my opinion, you have to get the public involved. You guys were talking about this earlier. You have to get the public has to know about what's going on. That's the only way you're going to get help, working on your project. People just need to know, and social media is the way to go. Mm-hmm. Every time an event or a anniversary of 100 days, or, like I told you, I'm working on 1,900 days coming up here in October. And so I'll be calling all the news stations, and somebody's going to come out and do a story on it because they have for the last 1,800 days. So you just have to stay focused and keep people informed.
So Dami and I hit a lot of the takeaways that we want people to think about when they're going to start their own projects. What advice would you give people looking to start?
Let's start. Yep. So in my example with the whole cemetery work, if you're going to do something like that, how I started was I Googled and YouTubed everything because there was somebody else out there doing it. And like you guys had mentioned with my own family, someone had cleaned my stones. I was so nervous if when I was going to start doing it the right way. So if you are going to start doing anything, spend more than just 5 minutes researching something. Actually spend hours and hours and hours, which is what I did, and I watched the same video over and over and over again. I put it in 0.25 speed to literally watch the smallest thing because I didn't want to mess up. And sure, you might end up being like, well, I can just be a little bit quicker with it because it's an abandoned thing and no one's going to come anyway, which hopefully someone comes. So yeah, you can get a little bit quicker with it if you want, but at the same time, if you're like me and you're a little obsessive about it and you want it to look perfect, spend more than 5 minutes researching it, spend more than 10 minutes working on it, spend 35 hours researching it, and spend 6 hours actually doing the work. I've literally spent 10 hours working on a single stone because I wanted it to look as perfect as it could. And when it was all done, it still didn't look as perfect as it could because time happens and just did its own wear. But yeah, if you're going to start something, research and call and Google and YouTube, just do as much work before you actually go and start something. And even when you start things, you'll learn as you go along. Yeah, so it's a learning experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Bob, how about you? What advice do you have?
Yeah, you just have to work at it. It's not easy. When I got involved in my project here, it started out just as I was going to take flowers, make sure there was flowers on the benches every day. And every day I was going there, and then all of a sudden people started talking to me, like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And who are those people? There's 2 names on benches here, but who are they? We don't know who they are. They died 50 years ago. So that's when I put my signs there. I went and had signs made, and I put a sign at each bench explaining the story of their life, their last few moments on earth. And but it's a lot of work. You really got to work at it. It's not a 5-minute project like he was saying. It's not something you do in 5 minutes. You have to be dedicated to this, and I'm totally dedicated to my project. I've told both families numerous times that as long as I'm alive, those 2 people's names will be in the public news. They'll be out there every time, all the time. Everybody will know who they are.
And what about any challenges that either of you have faced working on these projects?
Well, I can tell you my challenges are with the city of York. They're not giving me any help. I just went, thank God, I went last week to the Christmas attics, and I offered my original signs that I placed at those benches. I offered them to their history center that they're building. And they were excited to accept them. And they invited me to the Christmas attics. We filmed, we recorded, I gave them the signs, and I explained to them that when I had talked to Lillie Belle Allen's family, they were interested in having a historical marker placed at the site where she was killed. And the city has mentioned this to me, but there's no headway made there. But the Christmas attics informed me that they're going to take care of that, and they're going to do it. And there's going to be a historical marker there, and they're going to invite the family up from South Carolina when they install it.
Good.
Nice.
Good. That's great.
So I'm really excited.
Awesome.
That's amazing.
Jacob, how about your challenges?
So some of my challenges kind of involve, like you guys had mentioned about getting permission. I do more than just Smoketown Cemetery. There's a couple I work at, some that my own ancestors are buried at, but also just in the area, Miller Cemetery, you know that up on the hill. But like I try to do, I'm taking on a lot more than I can chew, that's for sure, but I'm slowing it down. But getting permission for one is a big thing. And if you can contact the family, that's great. And it's very awkward because I had always wanted, like, someone had cleaned my stones, and I was like, well, I wish someone would have called me. Well, for whoever cleaned it, which in my example was the Boy Scouts, they might not know I exist. Yeah. So you almost have to do a lot of research to find out, hey, I want to clean this person's stone, but is there a relative I can contact to say, hey, is it okay? And that amount of effort is very, very extensive if you don't have, ancestry and all that, And even if you do, my name might not even pop up, you know? So like myself, I was actually very frustrated. I was like, oh my gosh, someone cleaned my stone. I wish someone would have called me and I would have said no right away. Which then I called, in that exact example, I called the church and I said, I'm going to place a little like stake at every one of my ancestors' markers. So if you have a Boy Scout troop come in, and everyone's very respectful about that. So that's one of the challenges, actually, like communication with everybody involved, whether it's a family member, the church, or the township. That's a big hurdle, because I've had a cemetery say, don't come here and clean, like, because I think they were expecting me to, like, you know, charge. I was like, oh, it's totally free. I'm doing this just because I care. And they're like, nah, we have somebody who does it. I'm like, okay, like, that's fine. It was actually Prospect Hill, so they're very large. And I was like, okay, you're huge. I don't need to butt in. But the other thing is just that learning curve of knowing what to do and how to do it. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I'll clean a stone with bleach and I'll just reset it with concrete and I'll do all these things. And I'm like, just literally yesterday, I had someone on Reddit was like, oh, that's a newer stone. It's granite. It's okay. Use bleach. And I'm like, yeah, don't do that. And he's like, oh, I've been in the business for 30 years. And I'm like, okay, my personal opinion is don't use bleach. And we actually had a very good conversation about that. But yeah, you'll butt heads with people who just don't, like myself, don't touch my family stone, you know. I'm respectful about it. But like that's an obstacle. But then you also have the obstacles of learning and other people telling you just do this. And again, that's where that research comes in. And the only other obstacle I can think of is actually hurting yourself on the scene. I've hurt myself. I've cut myself. I've dropped stones on myself.
Wow.
I've come. So
You're out there alone in the cemetery with the stone on top of you.
yeah, I mean, dig a hole, I guess, in case I get hurt, and just find a spot. I don't know. But yeah.
So our last question for you guys tonight is, what other projects are you thinking about in the future? I know you mentioned your historical marker, and I know that you have worked with the Wreaths Across America. You kind of did your own thing. Do you guys have any other plans in the works?
For me, I mean, obviously, I would like to tackle more cemeteries once I get Smoketown figured out. Both sides of the cemetery would be great, and then move on to some of the other ones. Someone on Facebook actually reached out. They have a cemetery in their like backyard that as York Historical Society documented, like, I think she said like 60 years ago, but then all of that's lost.
Yeah, I know we tried to look it up even in the archives, and it really is lost. Like, no one knows anything about it. But there's like a War of 1812 veteran down there, so it definitely can work. And
I've been wanting to actually just go down. I just haven't had the time. And next thing you know, I walk in, I'm like, here's my new project.
They find you sometimes.
Yeah. But then, you had mentioned the wreaths. So last Christmas I did, artificial wreaths, so I could reuse them. And I did them for all the cemeteries, kind of the smaller cemeteries, a lot of the ones that are neglected. So like Nevinger's and Miller, Smoketown, they were very overgrown. I even went in Christmas Eve, upsetting my wife extremely, and was weed whacking for hours, just mowing down, 6 foot tall weeds just so I could place wreaths and flags on the veterans. And you and I had spoken about doing Paddletown. But I can tell you now, artificial wreaths definitely do take up some space in my basement. So I had someone else reach out to me about becoming an official partner with Wreaths Across America, where they would, if you do all the paperwork and all the jargon, they would say sure, you can, we'll be an official Wreaths Across America cemetery, and that would be Paddletown. So
that's awesome.
I do have to do some of that work to figure some of that out, and I'm sure you guys, it'll take years to figure out, but hopefully not. But yeah, so that's one of my little projects is wreaths.
Awesome. Thank you.
So,
Yeah, the only other project I'm starting to focus on now is, besides the historical marker for Miss Allen, because they do have the police memorial they just placed in front of the police station. They haven't dedicated that yet, but I don't even have a date on that. But anyway, my other project that I would like to see a separate memorial somewhere in New York City for Miss Lillie Belle Allen. So we'll work on that after the historical marker comes about, and maybe I can get some help from the Christmas Addicts for that. So, but that's my goal.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. And remember, our next episode is going to be September 26th at Continental Square in New York.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
watching.
Thank you.